All right, populations and samples. Fun fact, I don't know if it's fun, but it took 200,000 years for humans to reach 3 billion in number. So we had 3 billion people. But then it took 40 years for the next 3 billion. Like, that is insane. I don't know if that blows your mind as much as it blows mine. And I mean, I just got this off the internet, so like, who's to say it's true? But like, I kind of believe it. Like, that's super crazy. That's exponential growth. Like, whoa. Okay. Anyway, so you've probably heard it many times before, but it'll say, like, survey results show that 54% of Americans believe that, blah, 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 blah. And you're sure that you didn't participate in that survey, and neither did anyone that you know, but yet the researchers claim that the survey represents the beliefs of all Americans. How can this be possible? This is why it's so important to, like, question things, I guess, or question the way that they came up with their data, because sometimes it's true, or you can skew data to, like, look the way you want it to look, if that makes sense. But anyways, so there are, there are different ways to represent a population, and statisticians use a technique called sampling. Okay, so population versus a sample. So a population, when we talk about the entire group that we're interested in, that is called the population. When some members of the group are selected to represent the entire group, that's called a sample. So, like, let's say the entire population would be all of my students. And then a sample could be first period, okay? The things we are interested in knowing about the population is the parameter of interest. So say I wanted to know, like, how many of my students are succeeding in my class. So how many of them are passing versus failing? Well, the entire population would be every student I teach. A sample would be first period, and then the parameter of interest would be how many of them are failing. Okay, let's go through some examples. So a grocery store wants to know the average number of items that shoppers purchase in each visit to the store. They decide to count the items in the cart of every 20th person through the check stand. So we want to know what's the population, what's the sample, and what's the parameter of interest. Where the population here is everyone at the grocery store. Okay, whatever customers come into the grocery store, that is our population. Our sample is every 20th person through the check stand, because we're not doing it for every person. We're just counting the number of items every 20th person has. So the parameter interest is the average number of items per customer. Okay. So this example, a team of biologists want to know the average weight of fish in a lake. They decide to drop a net and measure all the fish caught in 3 different locations. So the population, sample, and parameter of interest. Well, the population would be all the fish in this lake. The sample would be the fish caught in the 3 locations. And the parameter of interest would be the weight of the fish, the average weight of the fish. Okay. So there's different types of samples. There are 6 types of sampling techniques that we will learn right now. Okay, so the first one is a simple random sample. And this is a randomly selected subset of a population. In this sampling method, each member of the population has an exactly equal chance of being selected. So it's just completely random. Here's an example. You're in charge of the school activities. You want to know what activities students would prefer to participate in during the school year. So you decide to put the name of each student in the school into a big bowl. So like if we're doing everyone at Corner Canyon, that's a huge bowl. But then you draw 100 of those names and you ask those students to respond to a survey. Everyone has an equal number of, equally likely chance to be selected because we put everyone's name in the bowl and we're just randomly drawing. Okay? Systematic sample is a type of sampling method in which sample members from a larger population are selected according to a random starting point with a fixed periodic interval. Okay, so let's look at an example of what this would be. So you're in charge of school activities and blah, blah, blah. You want to know what they prefer to participate in. So you assign each student in the school a number. And you select a starting number, so let's say 3. And then you select every 10th student in that list from that point forward. So then we do like 3, 13, 23, 33, 43, blah, blah, blah. Okay, Well, that is our fixed periodic interval would be 10, and our random starting point was the third. And everyone was assigned a number, so this is a systematic sample. Okay, got it. Now, a cluster sample is where researchers divide a population into smaller groups known as clusters, and they then randomly select among these clusters to form a sample. Okay, so blah, 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 you're in charge of this activities. You get the list of all the homeroom classes and randomly select 5 classes. You go to each of the classes selected and survey all the students in those classes. Well, so we have everyone at the school because everyone has a homeroom class, but then we want to just do some of those. So we randomly select 5 homeroom classes and then go to those classes and we're going to survey everyone. Cute. Okay. Stratified random sample is where researchers divide a population into subpopulations called strata based on specific characteristics. So it could be race, gender, location, etc. Every member of the population should be in exactly one stratum. So an example, we have this auto analyst, and they're conducting a satisfaction survey, sampling from a list of 10,000 new car buyers. So there's 2,500 Ford buyers, 2,500 GM, 2,500 Honda, and 2,500 Toyota. The analyst selects a sample of 400 car buyers by randomly sampling 100 buyers from each brand. So that makes sure that we get 100 from each, so we have a little diversity there. But then that would be the stratified random, because they were broken up into groups or strata, and then we pick some from there. I don't even know why I put that there. Okay. Convenient sample is where people are sampled simply because they are convenient sources of data for researchers. So a shopping mall management company would like to know the average amount that shoppers in the mall spend during their visit. They post 2 surveyors near one of the exits who ask shoppers to tell them what they spent as they leave the mall. Well, this is just convenient because they're just standing there asking people. So the only way that you are going to even be asked is if you happen to be at the shopping mall. Okay? Oh, it's so sad. All right, last one. So volunteer sample is a type of sample made up of self-chosen participants. These participants volunteer to take part in different research studies to share their opinions on topics that interest them. So back to the school activities. This time you make a lot of copies of the survey about the activities that students prefer, and you put them on the table outside of the cafeteria. Students can then choose to take the survey and drop their responses into a big box. Okay, so this would be a volunteer because they are volunteering to do this by themselves. Okay? Everything's going to be okay, guys. So here's our types. We want to identify the sampling technique. We already did this one. This was our cluster sample. I'm not even going to read it. Let's do this one. So school activities, you stand in the cafeteria during your lunch break and ask students if they would be willing to participate in a survey as they walk by. What would this one be? Well, it would be a volunteer sample, except for I think we could also argue because you're getting volunteers, but you're also, this is convenience also, I think. So it's probably a little bit of both here. Okay, let's do another one. So you're interested in finding out the percent of residents in the city that have experienced a robbery in the past year. Using the city property records, you assign each resident a number. You use a random number generator to give you a list, and you look up police reports for each resident selected. Well, we are using a random number generator to give us a list of numbers, and then from that list, we're going to go look up the residents' reports. So this would be a simple random sample, okay, because it's just random. We're just picking randomly. A restaurant owner wants to find the average number of dishes ordered at the table, served on Friday evenings, their busiest time. She decides to collect and analyze every 5th receipt of the night. Well, this would be a systematic sample because we're looking at every 5th receipt. Okay, there's a couple other techniques. I know. Some other techniques for measuring parameters of interest. So So there's surveys, which we've already talked about, surveys. Observational studies. So these are the types of studies where researchers observe the behavior of the participants or subjects without trying to influence it in any way they can about the parameter of interest. Okay, so we're just observing. This little boy is like kind of creepy. He's like blinking over there. Okay, experiments. Well, we all know what experiments are. It's where researchers can manipulate the variables to try and determine cause and effect. So we want to identify techniques used in the following. So to determine whether drinking orange juice prevents colds, researchers randomly assign participants to a group that drank no orange juice or a group that drank 2 glasses per day. They measured the number of colds that each group had over the course of the year and compared the results to the 2 groups. Well, this would be an experiment because we have a control group and we have a just another group, and then we compare the results. To determine whether exercise reduces the number of headaches, researchers randomly select a group of participants and record the number of hours each participant exercised and the number of headaches each participant experienced. Well, this would be an observational study because we're not doing anything. We don't have like a control group. There's nothing. We didn't tell a group that we need them to exercise more or whatever. So this would just be an observation. To determine the effectiveness of a new advertising campaign, a restaurant asked every 10th customer if they had seen the advertisement and if they had been influenced their decision to visit the restaurant. This would be a survey. Okay, bon voyage. Bye, guys.